Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson-Millen. A very special welcome to our viewers on OneSpotMedia.com. So we are talking INDECOM this evening and the future of that entity in light of two recent Court of Appeal rulings. Joining us this evening, we have Director of Legal Affairs at the Police Federation, Corporal Ron James. Also with us, Attorney at Law Chuck Cameron and Attorney at Law at Jamaicans for Justice, John Clark. Before we get into the discussion with our guests, though, here's this overview from TVJ's Giovanni Dennis.
I believe that sometimes INDECOM goes too far and places our police officers on the retreat.
That statement by Prime Minister Andrew Holness about INDECOM at a Jamaica Labour Party conference at the National Arena in November 2017. It was not the only time that the Prime Minister has been critical of INDECOM, but he's not the only one. Here is Executive Member of the Police Federation Arlene McBean at a police funeral in December 2017.
Is it that an existence of an agency of 5 years is going to demoralize us? I say to the media fraternity, running to have press briefings and press conferences does not work. Running there to have statistics, that's not efficiency. We need an amendment of that act.
5 years earlier in 2012, the Special Constabulary Force Association calling for the removal of the INDECOM head.
I believe that the integrity of INDECOM investigation is compromised.
Members of the police force, including former commissioners Dr. Carl Williams and George Quaylo, have argued continually that INDECOM hinders their ability to do their job. But INDECOM insists that this is not so.
If it is true that members of the JCF are neglecting their duties because they are displeased with the accountability mandated by our Constitution and by our Parliament, the problem is not with the accountability, but with the culture of the force and its leadership.
Security Minister Robert Montague defended INDECOM last October, saying fewer than 10% of the police shootings are recommended for criminal prosecution.
As a result of the work of INDECOM and the police, we have seen police fatal shootings take a nosedive in this country. And we must treat with, if you do and discharge your duties properly, you have nothing to fear from INDECOM.
But what exactly is INDECOM and why was it established? Well, the Independent Commission of Investigations came into being during the tenure of former Prime Minister Bruce Golding. On page 64 of the JLP's 2007 election manifesto, you can find this promise. Restructure the Police Public Complaints Authority into an independent investigative authority to investigate all cases of police abuse or excesses. This was at a time when there was widespread dissatisfaction with the existing mechanisms for investigating the police, namely the Police Public Complaints Authority and the Bureau of Special Investigations. After the JLP won the 2007 election, the bill was brought to Parliament. It was signed into law on April 15, 2010. The Act sets out the functions of INDECOM. They are to conduct investigations, to inspect public bodies and forces as part of those investigations, to review disciplinary procedures for the security forces, and to ensure that responsible officials report to INDECOM any incidents and complaints concerning the conduct of members of the security forces. These include members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, Jamaica Defence Force when acting in support of the police, members of the Island Special Constabulary Force, the Rural Police, and the Parish Special Constables. The law gives wide-ranging powers of investigation to INDECOM. That is not in question. But what has caused much discord is the question over the power to arrest. Section 20 of the INDECOM Act says, quote, "The Commissioner and the investigative staff shall in the exercise of their duty under this Act have the like powers, authorities and privileges as are given by law to a constable," end quote. This has been taken by INDECOM to mean that its officers are empowered to arrest and prosecute members of the security forces that are deemed to have engaged in misconduct. Case in point, Deputy Superintendent of Police Albert Dyer was charged and prosecuted by INDECOM for interfering with its work. Mr. Dyer challenged his conviction, saying INDECOM had no such powers. Last Friday, March 16, the Court of Appeal ruled on Mr. Dyer's case and another case brought by the Police Federation and several other organizations challenging the powers of INDECOM. The court quashed his conviction and also unanimously ruled that the Independent Commission of Investigations, INDECOM, is not empowered by Section 20 of the Act, statute, or common law to arrest, charge, or prosecute any person for any criminal offense. The court did say, however, in a split decision that the Commissioner and investigators, as private citizens, can arrest, charge, and prosecute. Here is Chairman of the Police Federation, Cecil McCullough.
From what I heard and from what I read so far, even though I'm not a lawyer, it's clear to me that the appeal court is saying that INDECOM should not arrest nor prosecute, and that is my understanding. We are extremely happy because we have been maybe the only voice out there in the wilderness since 2010 as it relates to this matter.
This is what INDECOM boss Terence Williams said.
The INDECOM investigator, as does every Jamaican citizen, has a right to bring a prosecution, has a right to conduct that prosecution.
Notwithstanding the rulings of the Court of Appeal, much of the current uncertainty and controversy surrounding the power of INDECOM may have been brought about by the inaction of Parliament. Here are the opposition leader and the Prime Minister in Parliament on January 30, less than 2 months ago.
While we urge them to obey the law, I want to urge those who investigate them, including INDECOM, to be mindful of the circumstances in which they operate. If I can be blunt, if INDECOM has a problem with the members of the security forces, I don't think they should disarm them in public, in full view of the citizens. I think that unnecessarily demoralizes.
We take the view that there really needs to be balance in how INDECOM operates. I've decided not to I've decided not to go any further with my comments on INDECOM. I think this House, which created the institution, which still retains the power, at some point, and I suspect it would have to be sooner than later, we will have to take some decisions to ensure that that very important institution operates with balance.
The following day, INDECOM Commissioner Terence Williams sent 2 press releases categorically denying that INDECOM disarms officers. In May 2013, a Joint Select Committee of Parliament was established to review the INDECOM Act. After 2 years and 23 meetings, having met with the Jamaica Constabulary Force, INDECOM, and several other stakeholders, the Joint Select Committee in November 2015 tabled its report to Parliament. That report included the following recommendations: that the INDECOM Act should be amended to include a new subsection which would allow INDECOM to institute and undertake criminal proceedings. The Joint Select Committee's report also looked at Section 20 of the Act. It recommends that INDECOM investigators should be given the powers A. to arrest as is given by the law to a constable, and B. to lay criminal charges and serve summonses as are given by law to a constable. If Parliament had acted, it may have voted to reject some of the recommendations while accepting others, but what it would have done is provide a clear modus operandi for the state agency. However, in March 2018, more than 2 years after the report was submitted, no decisions or actions have been taken arising from that review. Giovanni Dennis, for All Angles.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. And just to follow up on that report with a couple of additional points, one of the things that Terence Williams said is that the investigators of INDECOM, in fact, have always acted in their private capacity, or let me rephrase that their investigations and their charges have always been laid by the named investigators as individuals, not as INDECOM. One of those, the reason for that, no doubt, in fact, when you look at the review that was conducted by the Parliamentary Committee, it did point out that INDECOM as an entity doesn't have legal personality. It can't sue, it can't be sued. And as a matter of fact, that was also one of the recommendations, that it should be made into a quote-unquote corporation sole, where it would have those kinds of legal powers. And another recommendation had been for the creation of some kind of internal review board, and that also had proved very controversial. All right, we're nearly at the break, but let me just ask for very quick comments. On balance, has INDECOM proven that we need an INDECOM? John Clark, let me ask you first of all.
Yes, our history has proven that we need an independent body that can actually investigate cases of police abuse or alleged police abuse. It is necessary not only for the citizens, but it is also necessary for the police officers. And I'm sure my friend from the Federation would point out that in many of the cases, INDECOM are in fact clear officers. And this independent investigation, which can provide an independent clear, is something that the officers need and is needed by Jamaicans.
All right, we're just about at the break, so let me go to break, and then when we come back, we'll ask our other guests that. Remember, you can tweet along with us. It's TVJ All Angles. That's our hashtag. We'll soon come. Stay with us.